Welcome, everyone. Today we're diving into some really intriguing ideas about early Christian thought, ideas that challenge the very nature of who Jesus was.
Absolutely. It's fascinating stuff. So, we're looking at a theory that suggests the original message didn't actually revolve around a historical figure.
Exactly. The key idea here is that millions have assumed Jesus was a man who walked the earth, preached to crowds, and died on a Roman cross. But this theory, led by Dr. Richard Carrier, posits that the very earliest Christians, like some radical sects, envisioned Jesus as a purely celestial being, a heavenly savior, not a flesh and blood human being.
Right. And that really flips the script, doesn't it? It's like, imagine if the central figure of Christianity was always a mythic, cosmic force rather than a historical person.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if you think about it, the idea was that the original Jesus never walked on the earth at all. Instead, he came down from the pleroma, which is this divine realm comprised of aeons, to awaken the inner
that's a wild
spark
concept.
in human souls.
I mean, that notion really shakes up the way we understand traditional Christian narratives. So who were the main proponents of this view in early Christianity?
Well, one of the key groups were the Valentinians. Now, Valentinus, who was born around 100 CE in Egypt, created a pretty elaborate system where Jesus wasn't born in Bethlehem or famously performing miracles like walking on water. Instead, he was seen as an Aeon, a divine emanation from the fullness of divine truth.
That's really something. So essentially, for the Valentinians, Jesus was never actually human in the conventional sense, but was a symbolic, cosmic being?
Exactly. He descended from that celestial realm, the pleroma, and entered what they termed the sublunar realm, which represented the flawed material world. His mission was about awakening the divine spark within people rather than literally saving a human soul through, say, crucifixion on a Roman cross.
I see. And then there's Marcion, right? He had a similar but also somewhat contrasting view from what I gather.
Yep, absolutely. Marcion of Sinope was a contemporary of Valentinus. While the Valentinians built an intricate cosmology involving multiple aeons and divine pairings, Marcion was more simplistic in a way, proposing that there were two gods, one, a tyrannical deity of the Old Testament, and another, a benevolent higher God from whom Jesus came.
Right. So, Marcion essentially argued that Jesus was like a spirit being that only appeared human, while the Valentinians viewed him as pure divine essence.
That's it. Marcion believed Jesus did appear in the flesh, but only as an illusion, because in truth he was just a spirit, distinct from the flawed physical world. With the Valentinians, it wasn't so much a disguise as it was his inherent nature to be a conduit of cosmic light.
Really interesting. Now, one point I'm curious about. If these early Christians really believed in this cosmic Jesus, how did that transition into the more familiar historical Jesus narrative we know today?
Great question. It seems that as time went on, as the Church's hierarchy grew stronger, with figures like Irenaeus and Tertullian spearheading the Orthodox view, the narrative shifted. The vision of a celestial mythic savior was seen as too radical and dangerous. So the Church, labeled these mystic interpretations as heresies, and gradually rewrote the narrative to fit a more historical, concrete figure.
Yeah, that makes sense. But don't you think it's a bit too convenient that the radical ideas were essentially purged by church authorities to solidify organizational control?
I mean, it's like a power play, right? The original, more symbolic truths were too destabilizing for the emerging hierarchical structure. So, by suppressing these celestial interpretations, the Church established a narrative that not only grounded Jesus as a human, but also reinforced the authority of its own clergy.
Indeed, that certainly raises some eyebrows. And when you look at it, the Valentinians weren't just fringe believers. They were very much embedded in the early church, right? Some scholars even suggest they might have outnumbered what we now call Orthodox Christians in certain regions.
Exactly. Their reach was extensive, and their ideas were intellectually rich, They blended Greek philosophy with these new spiritual ideas to create a deeply symbolic narrative. For instance, they used allegory to interpret the scriptures, suggesting that secret layered meanings were accessible only to the spiritually mature.
Yeah, that's pretty mind-blowing. It's really like an ancient version of decoding hidden messages in a text, unlocking deeper truths, right?
Yeah, it's like a secret code for spiritual enlightenment. And then you have quotes like the one from David Litwa where he says, Jesus did not come to die for sin, but to reveal the forgotten identity of the soul. That really encapsulates that alternative view.
Absolutely. So, if I'm getting this right, then, according to Carrier's point, what we inherited as the story of Jesus might be a later political and theological construction to support the new church's power.
That's the crux of it. It suggests that the earthly Jesus of Nazareth might have been a crafted invention to replace a far more abstract cosmic Christ. It's like the difference between a mythic blueprint and a historical reconstruction, shifting from the visionary to the docile.
Indeed, that shift is fascinating. But one might ask, how much evidence do we really have for these original celestial beliefs? I mean, isn't it possible that the human Jesus narrative was always the dominant one, and these were just minor splinters?
That's a valid challenge. While we do rely on texts like the Nag Hammadi discoveries, like the Gospel of Truth, which clearly reveal a radically different portrayal of Jesus, it's always a matter of interpretation. The carriers of these beliefs were, however, influential enough, as we see with the Valentinians and even in the teachings of Marcion.
Yeah, I get that. So, in essence, the argument is less about disproving a historical human Jesus, and more about uncovering a layered history, where the concept of Jesus evolved over time, influenced by theological, philosophical, and political forces.
Right, exactly. It's like peeling an onion. Each layer reveals a different interpretation. The early Christian movement was diverse, and over time the dominant narrative got canonized while the more mystical, symbolic understandings were sidelined.
Absolutely, that's a great analogy. And then, by the late 2nd century, as the Church rid itself of what it deemed heretical, these cosmic interpretations were mostly erased or hidden, only to be rediscovered much later in texts like those found at Nag Hammadi.
Yes, exactly. And that rediscovery has sparked renewed debates about what early Christians really believed. It certainly challenges our modern assumptions about the origins of Christian doctrine.
Right, it's almost revolutionary. Now, if we step back a bit, why do you think these celestial concepts resonated with people back then? I mean, was there something in the cultural or intellectual climate of the time that made such ideas appealing?
Oh, definitely. The 1st and 2nd centuries were a time of rich intellectual exchange. Greek philosophy was flourishing, and ideas about the soul, the divine spark, and the nature of reality were, very much in vogue. The blending of pagan and emerging Christian ideas created an environment where quasi-cosmic interpretations of salvation could flourish.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like they were trying to bridge the gap between the abstract philosophies of the time and the spiritual needs of everyday people.
Exactly. It's like using the language of the cosmos to talk about personal redemption and the mysteries of existence. And, in a way, these ideas promised a kind of empowerment. They invited individuals to tap into this divine spark within themselves instead of just relying on an external savior.
That's a powerful idea indeed. What's also interesting is how this cosmic interpretation confronted conventional religious power. I mean, by elevating Jesus to a mythic, intangible level, it essentially undermined the authority of a single clerical hierarchy.
Right. And that is perhaps why the Orthodox Church found these ideas so threatening. If salvation was about tapping into a universal cosmic energy rather than following strict hierarchical doctrines, it defied the very structure they were trying to establish.
Absolutely, that's a critical point. I can see why that would lead to intense conflicts. After all, having competing interpretations of a central figure like Jesus is bound to lead to some theological skirmishes.
Yeah, the tensions were real. The Valentinians and Marcionites even despised each other for their differing views. The Valentinians critiqued Marcion's stark dualism, arguing for a richer, multifaceted cosmic vision.
Yeah, it's like a cosmic tug of war. At the end of the day, isn't it kind of astonishing that these early debates set the stage for centuries of evolving Christian thought?
Absolutely. It's like they planted a seed that over time, with all sorts of pruning and grafting, eventually became the tree of Orthodox Christianity that we recognize today. But the original branches, the more visionary cosmic ones, still whisper through the hidden texts and alternative traditions.
That's a great way to put it. In conclusion, whether or not one subscribes to the idea of a celestial Jesus, these discussions remind us that history is rarely, as clear-cut as we might like to think. It's layered, complex, and continuously reinterpreted over time.
Exactly. And it's this very complexity that makes the study of early Christian thought, along with the debates about myth versus history, so endlessly fascinating.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for this deep dive. It sure challenges us to rethink some foundational ideas.
Anytime. Remember, looking at history through a different lens doesn't diminish one's beliefs. It just enriches our understanding of the past and its many stories.
Well said. Until next time, keep questioning, exploring, and sharing these thought-provoking ideas.